62% of architects report experiencing regular stress or burnout with the long hours and deadlines. And when we start going, right, I'm the bottleneck, I'm the one that's been getting in the way, that's a really big breakthrough. Making the difficult decisions to let people go, that's some of the most powerful things you can do for your own firm.
Hello, Architect Nation, and welcome back. This is the right place for you if you run a small architectural practice. On today's episode, you'll discover the hidden habit that quietly makes you the bottleneck in your own firm and how to break it before it breaks your team. A simple back-of-the-envelope metric that reveals if your practice is truly high-performing or just surviving, and why chasing design brilliance without profit can strangle your freedom and the mindset shift that flips the script. So today's episode is actually myself, talking recently at the Austin AIA Design Excellence Conference. It was very hot. I bought a cowboy hat and I thoroughly enjoyed the experience. So hope you guys do too. And now a word from our sponsors.
BIM can be important for your next project, but it's not the only thing you need for your next project. That's why it's important that 95% of manufacturers who offer free BIM files on ARCAT also offer another type of data your project needs. That means 95% of the products with BIM also have CAD files and are in a specification, in a patented spec wizard, and or have product information to help you make the right selection. So stop going to a site with just BIM and go to arcat.com to get everything you need for your next project for free and without registering. That's ARCAT. ARCAT.com. A while ago, we began to hear reports of a company that was helping some of our clients build remote teams. We looked into it more closely and discovered the company World Teams that was helping small architectural practitioners build remote teams that were both capable and qualified. We were intrigued by another business that are addressing one of the critical pain points for small architectural practices, which is the ability to grow and shrink a team effectively, to be able to handle higher workflow without having to staff up significantly, and also being very sensitive about labor cost. World Teams is built to address these issues. World Teams is a small but mighty company that helps architectural practices build high-performing remote teams quickly and efficiently, saving you the headache of sorting resumes and interviewing underqualified candidates. World Teams operates in your time zone and prioritizes near-native English speakers, ensuring clear and efficient communication with your remote team members. They have flexible contracts so you can adjust your team size as your needs evolve. Additionally, you're connected directly with your skilled professionals, which fosters trust and collaboration, and World Teams helps you reduce your operating cost without compromising the quality that's so important to a practice. To download a free guide for building a remote team for a small architectural practice, go to businessofarchitecture.com/World Teams. That's one word, businessofarchitecture.com/World Teams. You've built a practice that balances design, delivery, and client trust. But when it comes to taxes, your firm's structure might be quietly working against you. At Gelt, we specialize in helping architecture firms uncover hidden tax inefficiencies, from outdated ownership setups to missed expense opportunities and project-level tax traps. Even well-run studios can leave 5 figures on the table each year simply because their financial foundation hasn't evolved as the firm has. Gelt helps you design a smarter structure, one that turns your firm's growth into real savings and stronger take-home income. Gelt, tax strategy built for architects. Don't wait for next tax season. Schedule your complimentary consultation at joingelt.com. That's JOINGELT.com to learn more and mention BOA when you sign up.
Okay, I think I can begin. Hello. Welcome, everybody. Because we're talking about high performance teams here and building a high performance team, can we build a high performance team to begin by everyone coming over to this side of the room? Would that be okay? Or were you guys going to be naughty and you were going to chit chat over there and have conversations? Come over here. Part of high performance teams is that we work together as a group. Proximity, none of this remote listening stuff.
My chit chat ruined it for everyone.
Yeah, exactly. There's 2 stragglers over there. Come on, gents. All right, now look at that. We've contained the energy a little bit here. High performance. That's what we're up to. That's what we're on about. Quick, come on. There we go. Okay, so hello, Austin. My name is Rion Willard, and as you probably guessed by my accent, I'm not from around these parts. I'm from the UK. This is my first time in Texas, so I'm very, very excited to be here. I have a lot of clients in Texas, a lot of clients in the US, and this is a drawing that one of them drew of me of how I should dress when going to Texas. So I didn't quite fulfill all of it, but I did go to South Congress and get myself a hat, which I'm very pleased with. So hopefully I'm assimilating well. However, I don't want to speak all day with it on because it was rather expensive. I don't want to sweat in it. So a little bit about me. I'm a retired architect, is how I often describe myself these days. I've worked for some big architecture firms in the UK, Richard Rogers, Grimshaw, and for the last 10 years, I've been working as a business consultant to architects. So I probably worked with about 300 or so clients around the world, helping them do things like building high-performance teams, increasing their profits, being more mission-led, developing their own leadership, cultivating talent, and all that kind of stuff. I'm also the host of a podcast called The Business of Architecture. Some of you may have come across it with my co-host Enoch. And that's been, we've interviewed, I don't know, nearly 1,000 people on that show, just asking, how do you make it work? How do you make more money? How do we remain mission focused? How do we resolve that balance between profitability and ensuring that we're doing great design? Okay, because it's not an easy business, even for the most seasoned of entrepreneurs. Okay, and many of us as architects, you start an architecture business and you didn't necessarily want to be business people, wanted to be architects. So this presentation might not be a good fit for you if you're not into participation, but we've already had a little test and everybody's participated rather well, and we've done a good test run of a high performance team. So I'm not worried about that, but I will be asking you to interact with each other, interact with me. We'll be doing some questions and some little exercises and just, making sure that we're human. Okay. It's very nice for me to be actually doing one of these talks in person. I spend probably 8 hours of the day talking on Zoom all the time. I'm sure some of you also have that kind of experience. So it's really, really nice to be in a room with real human beings, and I know you're not AI avatars. This might not be for you as well. I'll have a little sense in a minute of who we've got in the room, but this might not be for you if you don't want to have a look at your team's performance. Okay? Because one of the hallmarks of leadership is to be able to look at what you're doing as a leader and look at what your team is doing and be ruthlessly honest with yourself. Okay, it's a really refreshing thing to be able to do that, and it's not easy. So my invitation is there for you to do that. And also at the end, I'll invite you to take some action as well. So if you're not an action taker, this is not for you. So let me just check who is in the room. Please put your hand up if you are a firm owner. Okay, good. Probably the majority of the room. Who's a partner? Partner or firm owner? Yeah, okay. And who's an associate? So you want to track to become partner. Okay, and who's like a rock star team player? Yeah, okay. These are the guys that actually do the work, right? Okay, good. So as usual with all these talks that we end up doing, we start with some rather depressing statistics about the state of architecture around the world. So let's have a look, shall we? 62% of architects report experiencing regular stress or burnout with the long hours and deadlines. So that's from the RBA in the UK. 1 in 3 architects under 30 are considering leaving the profession due to well-being and workload issues. This is something that we're seeing more and more. It's quite disturbing. There's been this idea of the great exodus in architecture, that there's been a gap of people who are the sort of older millennials that have left the profession. Perhaps it was as a result of 2008 and people not getting the right building experience. Perhaps it was as a result of going through that strenuous architectural education and the profession not being what many people were hoping for. Or there's lots of other reasons. I spoke to a marketeer recently. He does a lot of research in the AEC industry, and they were telling me that, well, it's not like they've left. It's often that other companies, the ones that are really profitable, are offering the big salaries, and there's a bit of an asymmetry about where people are going. So lots of different ideas about it, but these sorts of statistics are coming up in various surveys and reports around the world. It's not just localized to the US or to the UK, that the younger generation of architects is struggling. Productivity in rework, 30% of design work is rework caused by miscommunication, unclear scope, or errors. I could give a talk for about 4.5 hours on this one topic alone, scope creep. Anybody here suffered with scope creep this week? Okay, it's a big one. It's a big one. And when we talk about giving away free work, most of us think about doing some sexy renders or something to tantalize a developer. But really, the majority of free work for architects is given away with a lack of communication around scope creep. Okay, and it starts with the team. We often have team members, they haven't been empowered to say no or to even raise a change in scope with their leaders in the firm, and they just start working on something. Okay, or we have the what happens quite a bit. Somebody is working on something, they come into a problem and they carry on working on it for 2 weeks, and then you, as one of the leaders in the firm, realize they've gone off into some sort of rabbit hole, and you have to pull them out of it. Okay, very, very common, and there's a number that we like to look at called your realization rate. Who knows what realization rate is? A few of you. Okay, so that's a number that basically tells you how much of the work that you've done you're actually billing for. Okay, so we would look at 100% realization rate as being, that's the basic really. Okay, but often what happens is that you'll do 100 hours worth of work on a project, but you'll only be billing for 50 of it. So then we have a 50% realization rate. Okay, so that's a really, really kind of important number to, for those of you who don't have that set up in your offices, I'd invite you to talk to your bookkeepers or your accountants or whatever management software you're using and start looking at that number, because it starts to give us an indication of how efficient and effective we really are. And in the context of this conversation, when I'm talking about high performance teams, I'm not just going to talk about design. I'm going to talk about money. I'm going to talk about profit, because good design becomes unsustainable without money. Okay, money, profit is an index of agency. And without it, we are undermining all of the wonderful design manifestos that we have, that we're talking about. Any of the things that we want to have activism around, we are undermining when we don't have financial agency underpinning it. Okay, this last statistic is quite interesting. The cost of turnover for a firm, for a mid-tier architect, can be 1.5 to 2 times their annual salary, lost in a productivity dip, the cost of recruitment, and the cost of onboarding. Okay, so hiring team members is a very expensive thing, and having a high level of churn can be very, very challenging. So some common issues being overwhelmed, capacity bottlenecks. Often we'll see the firm owners being a bottleneck. All decisions need to be made through one person. It's not uncommon for me to see architecture firms where the leader of the practice is the most experienced and technically competent person in the architecture practice. From an entrepreneurial standpoint, that's crazy. Okay, we want to be building out teams where we've got people who are more talented than us who are doing the work. But as architects, we tend to build a team around ourselves, and we retain the experience, which means that we're always going to be brought into decisions. Okay, so from a business perspective, that has a lot of constraints. As I said, scope creep and fee erosion, poor communication, talent retention struggles. Okay, so you're hiring people, then they're leaving. And then, of course, culture and well-being being neglected. I'm glad that we're talking about these things. In the UK, I'm part of a group called the Presidential Task Force Group for Wellbeing for the RIBA. And I act as an advisor to the RIBA on a lot of these sorts of matters. And I like the fact that the conversation about well-being is including money and business. From my perspective, money makes a lot of problems go away. Okay. In business, we often say that sales solves pretty much all of your problems. Okay. It's not going to get rid of all of your life problems. Okay. But it does make it a lot easier. So the focus on money and financial performance, that's a big, big message. If you only take one thing away from today, it's that money and profit and being focused on it and bringing a culture around that with our team, that can be a real galvanizer of power and accomplishment. So I got a number of questions. We've got a little bit of time here, which is nice. And I've got some questions here. So I'd like you all to have a piece of paper ready or something to write on, or you can write on your phones if you wish. But I'd like to spend a few minutes having a little reflection on these questions, okay? The first one, have you ever felt projects have stalled because of unclear roles? So people on your team or your colleagues are not actually sure what the boundaries are of their roles are, and there's confusion, it's unclear. Normally we can see this in a lack of autonomy, okay? So people not feeling like they can take ownership of a project, and then a project ends up getting delayed as a result. Overwhelm. Does anybody here not have overwhelm in the office? Oh, I wasn't hoping that was the answer. Okay, very common, okay? Very, very common. So have a look. Where does it occur? Does it occur at partner level? Are you, as a firm owner, are you getting overwhelmed and getting into a flap, and then it kind of percolates through the rest of the business? Or do you find your junior staff are unable to be able to deal with the stresses of architecture, of life in an architectural practice? Or is it more of the mid-tier, your project managers and your project architects are getting overwhelmed? Let's have a little look and audit where does overwhelm occur and what sorts of things are at the root of that overwhelm. Is it simply too much work? Is it too many deadlines? Is it unclear priorities? What happens when your deadlines clash with design ambition? So again, I was mentioning we have this wonderful tension in an architecture practice of balancing our design ambition and the fact that we're getting a fee, and a fee translates into a finite amount of hours. And I listen to stories of Louis Kahn, for example, and him, the very tragic ending of his life, being found in the toilets of Penn Station, broke and penniless, and often wonder what happened. I would love to do some deeper research into that and understanding what happened in his firm. Where was the money going? Was it a kind of just myopic focus on individual projects that just let bills and finance just, there wasn't any care for it? I don't know. But what happens with us when we have that design ambition and we've got deadlines and we've got a finite amount of hours to deliver something? What kind of clashes do we experience? How much unbilled time do you think your firm donates to clients each month? I don't expect you to be able to work that out right now, but again, after this conversation, go and tinker through some of your numbers. I hope everyone here does timesheets, right? Anybody want to admit that they don't do timesheets? Nicole, you don't. Get a timer and start doing timesheets, okay? So timesheets is, for most practices, it's the best way of you just understanding where your time is going. There's nothing sexy about it. There's nothing interesting about it. There's nothing fun about timesheets, but they really do become a backbone to understanding your financial performance and where time is being spent, okay? But the question is, how much unbilled time do you think your firm is donating to clients? Bottlenecks, where are they? Where do they happen? Are you the bottleneck? Are there other leaders in the firm that are bottlenecks? And then finally, this is a kind of more of an open-ended question. How much brilliance in your team is being left on the table? Okay, so answer these questions generally. Have a sort of brainstorming session here. And I'll give you, I've got my little timer here. Let's give you 3 minutes just to jot down some ideas, and then I'll get you to share with the person next to you what came up. Okay, so what I'll invite you to do now is turn to the person who's sitting next to you and just share what were some of the things that you uncovered from your inquiry just there. And I'll give you 4 minutes. But keep on task, okay? Okay, well done. Very good. Let's take a little bit of sharing here. I'd like to hear from some of you guys. What were things that you heard? What insights did you get just by considering that? We've got somebody with a roaming mic here who will come out and be able to grab your attention, grab you. But first of all, I just want to practice that everybody's arms are working because everyone gets very quiet on this. Can I just check that? Just everyone do that for a moment? That's it. Okay, so we're all high performance team builders here. So when we get asked questions, we all put our hands up, even though we don't know what it is that we're going to say. Okay, this is part of being a leader. So who would like to share, just to hear from a few of you? Get those hands working. This gentleman in the lovely floral shirt, and then David next to him. Go for it.
One of the things that struck me, particularly when you're talking about undouble time, getting out of the way, is how much time I spend 5 minute email here, 2 minute email there, all part of my job doing work, calling experiences to build and make the G2 implements got away. Like, that just gets.
Got it.
You should office.
So kind of fragmented time and activities, and it's like, oh, how on earth do I even, how do I even collect that time that was spent doing that? Got it. Great. Okay. David, this gentleman here.
I didn't intend for it to be this way, but I am the boss.
Well done. No, but I don't mean well done because you are the bottleneck, but I really want us to just acknowledge David here, because when we start to recognize that us as a business leader, the performance of the business is you. Okay. And when we start going, right, I'm the bottleneck, I'm the one that's been getting in the way, that's a really big breakthrough. Okay. That's a really, really big breakthrough. And I really appreciate you guys, just going with me here and sharing, because a lot of the stigma in architecture is that normally when we all get together, we all show fancy photographs of magazines and when we've been published and things like that. But one of the things that I find very rewarding in the work that we do of our clients, and that our clients find very fulfilling, is we're in a group and everyone starts sharing about what they're dealing with. And it's like, I'm not alone. I'm not the only one. I'm not the only one who's being a bottleneck. I'm not the only one who's got team members who aren't doing things I was imagining them to do them. So thank you very much. Anybody else? Let's have one more. Michael.
So David, I too am the bottleneck. But I think there's three that are related. So yes, I'm the bottleneck. And what was the one? The clash is deadline versus design ambition. Deadline wins because I want to get it out, and therefore brilliance is left on the table because I'm the brilliant bottleneck.
Very good. Very good. Thank you, Michael. Let's have one more. The lady in the back there with the glasses.
For the last question, I realize I have a lot of difficulty allowing my team the freedom to fail. It's really hard for me to give them, and I feel like there's a lot of brilliance being left there and a lot of just experience that they need.
Yeah.
And it's just really hard for me to not check every single little thing. And let them have those experiences where they mess up.
Excellent. Very good. And again, very, very common kind of concern that we have as business leaders, because your name's on the door, right? And we want to make sure that we've got the best work that's going out. And delegation, whilst it sounds so obvious, and if you listen to any of the Business Architecture podcasts, we always talk about it. You've got to be able to delegate and delegate effectively. But actually delegating effectively emotionally is very challenging, because it does mean creating a safe space for people to get it wrong. And getting it wrong could cost you something, could cost you reputation, it could cost you money. Okay, so it's not an easy environment to be able to create. However, just starting to learn that actually with delegation comes failure, and then you as a leader, you're standing for people to be leaders and to learn from those mistakes, and you want to be able to minimize it as much as possible. Okay, now we're great. Now we're starting to create a safe space where people can be autonomous. Okay, that's a really, really good one. Thank you very much for sharing that, because that's one of the things that I'll often hear from leaders of firms, is that they want their teams to become more autonomous, but actually giving the space for someone to become autonomous and to become a high performer means giving them the space to make that kind of mistake. Okay, so that takes a little something. It's an enormous amount of humility that's required or demanded of us when we've stepped into these leadership positions. Brilliant. Give yourself all a round of applause for everyone who shared. Much appreciated. So there are 4 types of archetypes of team problems that I've kind of divided them out. It's probably a fifth one as well. The lone wolf, that's somebody who just doesn't have a team, that they're operating as a solopreneur. In general, I don't like solopreneurship in architecture. I think it's the hardest, most difficult way to run an architecture practice. And these days, with the amount of technology that's available and remote workers and things like World Teams, people heard of World Teams? World Teams is a company in Argentina, and you can hire people across the Latin American continent to be on your team, and they become like proper team members. Absolutely amazing. And there's lots and lots of those sorts of things that are available. AI as well can be massively leveraged for you to be incredibly efficient, but doing it alone, very, very difficult, very, very difficult. The mismatched team, okay, so this is the wrong people in the wrong places. Usually what this manifests itself as smaller practices, higher inexperience, okay? And when you're a small practice and you haven't got good money coming in and you start hiring people who are inexperienced, you're trying to buy back your time in the first place. And usually what happens, or what often happens, is that you've now created a new problem where you need to be training new people. You've now created a new problem where your time that you were trying to buy back is now spent on training a young person. I love the architecture profession for the fact that we take it very seriously, that we're stewards of the next generation. Okay, that's a beautiful thing about any profession, that we're looking to kind of raise up and kind of keep the integrity of the craftsmanship and the experience. And I'm sure a lot of you guys in here get a lot of personal satisfaction from training younger members of the team. However, in a business context, we must earn the right to do that. That means you've got to have the money available in your business to be able to spend time training team members who perhaps are not as experienced as your business needs. Okay, so often we end up hiring people who are not the right fit just because we're kind of very concerned about money. We hire inexperience. Now we've got new problems that come in, and we're hoping that that person is going to get really good. And eventually they do get competent after 2 years, and then they're sick of you and they leave, and then the whole cycle starts again. The misaligned team, this is the right people in the wrong roles. So sometimes we do get talented people. And this is where it becomes really interesting that actually individuals have their own unique personalities. And we're big into personality profiling tools at Business of Architecture. We like to analyze everybody and see where they fit. And there are different personality types that are better for different types of roles. And it's a good investment for you to start uncovering that in the team, just so that they know how to communicate with each other, and so that you understand what the deeper motivations are of individuals' kind of personality makeups. I'd also, just on that one, encourage everybody to really start creating a space of transparency inside of your businesses. Start with getting more transparent with finances and profit and money, and have that as a conversation with your people, and start asking them questions about what do they want to earn, what do they want to be doing, what are some of their life goals. Because as soon as we start creating a space where people feel safe to share that kind of stuff with you, then you as a business leader start to understand what's really motivating people, and you can orientate your business to be able to support people in those dreams and visions. And then the toxic team, I'm sure nobody here has a toxic team, but this does come up every so often. I'll see a firm and they've got kind of chronic complaint running through the entire business. Or they've got, usually it's normally people who have been there for like 25 years, and they hate architecture and they hate everything about the business, about the industry, and they hate planning and they hate all these sorts of things. And they're just in complaint, but they're really good technically. Okay, so they're like a technical savant. And then the business owner's like, well, we're going to put him in a box over here so he doesn't talk to anybody, and just feed in drawings under the door and hope that he doesn't communicate with people. Okay, but toxic team members complaint, like, that's on you. Okay, that's on you as business leaders. Like, we've got to be aware, first of all, of where am I complaining? Where am I bitching and moaning and making everything so difficult, and then just projecting and vomiting it all down onto my team members and my staff? Okay, because it always starts with us. The complaints that we have about our team members are usually complaints that we have about ourselves, or things that we don't like about ourselves. And our team starts to reflect back all the poop that we have going on between our two ears back on us. Okay, this is one of my favorite little exercises. It's called the performance benchmarking number. And as a business of architecture, we have a little a scale that we use, and we have a club called the 200 Club. The 200 Club means that you as a business are bringing in $200,000 per full-time equivalent employee. Okay? And if you're bringing in $200,000 per full-time equivalent employee, you can classify yourself as a high-performance team. All right? Give yourself a pat on the back. Fantastic. Well done. Now, this is a really good number, and I'm going to get everyone to do a quick calculation and work out where you are. Your numbers might not be that accurate because we're going to do a back of the envelope exercise here. Okay? But I will invite you to, when you go home, to look through your numbers with more detail and work out exactly where you are in terms of this performance benchmarking number. But 200 is a number that myself, Enoch, we've seen through hundreds of firms that's a really good standard of business. You're normally making good profit, or you've got the capacity to make good profit. You can pay people properly, and there's no reason why you should be stressed out and working, 80-hour weeks.
Is that independent of sub-consultants?
Well, I'll explain in a minute. So, and that's one of the nuances that might need to be ironed out and kind of working out what the number is. So, $200,000 per full-time equivalent employee, that's a good hallmark of a high-performance team. 150 to 200, you're on good. That's very solid. Okay, that's a good marker. 100 to 150, you get this kind of nonplussed little face that I put there on the corner at number 2. And then anything below 100,000, this is where we need to start looking at why that is. In reference to your question, David, sometimes we see firms have 100,000 because they've got a lot of employees, but they might have a lot of employees who are not in the US. So they might have a team in Argentina or Chile, we often see. So they kind of have a lot of team members who they're paying not as much as they would domestic workers. It expands the amount of people that you have, and then the number begins to drop. Okay, so the number doesn't tell everything, but it's a good kind of starting point of trying to identify how well we're doing as a business. At BOA, our highest client has a benchmarking number of about $425,000, and that's a team of 8 people that they've got. And we've got a number of people who are all up in the 300s, which is very encouraging. And we see probably within the first 12 months of one of our clients working with us that they move at least sort of 50% increase in their benchmarking, which is pretty solid. So,
Mike,
yeah.
When you say maybe just terminology, when you say net sales, you're saying, is that like net revenue? So we have our gross, we've paid our consultants. This is before profit. This is what I've got left.
Yes. Yeah. So the number that we use is, I usually call it net operating revenue. I've put net sales here. And that is your total income minus what you're paying consultants. If the consultants' fees are more than, say, 25% of the total money that you're collecting, because that's not your money. Does that make sense? Okay, it's like a pass-through expense. So normally with net operating revenue, we don't include pass-through expenses because it's not your money. If you're making a markup on those services, that is your money. Okay, so we're going to do a little exercise. Going to give you 5 minutes. I want you to look at what your net sales were for the last 12 months and then divide it by the amounts of bums on seats that you have. Okay, the amount of people. And I would say here, normally we do a full-time equivalent employee, which means how many hours. And here in the US, 40 hours a week is one person. Okay, so if you've got somebody working 20 hours a week, that would be half a person. So bear that in mind. And you can see how you can get more nuanced and more detailed with it. But the easiest way of doing it is have a look. How much money did you bring in over the last 12 months? Okay, if you don't know what your consultant fees were, just stab a guess at it. And then divide it by divide it by the amount of people that you've got in the firm. And that will give you an idea of where your benchmarking number is. Make sense? Okay, let's give you 3 minutes. Just back of the envelope calculation. Do it with your calculators. If you're a partner in a firm and you don't look at your finances, then again, just hazard a guess. at what you think your revenue was. Same for team members. Okay, and it's a good thing for team members to start doing, is just figure out what kind of money is the company bringing in. And if you are a team member and you're asking these sort of questions and the leaders of the firms are saying no, then come and talk to me. Okay, 3 minutes. Okay, so hopefully a few of you have got an idea there, back of the envelope calculation, and you've managed to locate where you are in terms of your financial performance. Okay, but that's a really useful number. I don't know if any of you guys have seen the recent Monograph reports. Anyone know Monograph, the financial management software? They produce a report called Section Cut every year, and they've demonstrated a very similar sort of thing, that in the upper quartile of clients that they have, it's around the $200,000 mark as well. So I'm pretty confident that this is a good hallmark of a high performance firm. It does change location to location. So places like New York or in California, I think it's a lot easier to get up to 200, and we often see people there's silly money all around there. And perhaps in more rural areas, it might be a little bit more challenging, okay? But it's a good benchmark for you and your firm to be talking about and have a conversation around, here's what we want to be doing financially. What does that look like? Okay. This is a little diagnosis tool called the High Will, High Skill Table. And it's very useful for you to use and actually identify where team members and yourself might be in this table. Okay, so along the left-hand side, we've got high will and then low will. Along the top, we've got high skill and low skill. The bottom right-hand quadrant, if you have people in that quadrant, they should not be in your business. Okay, there is no reason for them to be there at all, unless maybe if it's your child, but other than that, no, it's not good. It's going to be expensive for you. Low skill, high will. I like high will. We all love high will. Okay, high will is awesome because people who have high will can be trained. They're hungry, they're ambitious, they're focused, they're resilient, they've got purpose. They're the kind of people that we want to be working with. Okay, there's a danger. If we've got high will, low skill, they are effectively a beginner. The lower salaries for new graduates, from my perspective, is a reflection not of their innate talent or their abilities, but it is just a reflection of their economic value in the architecture industry. That's it. That's all it is. There's no sort of big thing about it. That's just, they don't have the skills that an architecture business needs to be making money and profit. So when we bring those sorts of people on into the firm, you've got to look at your numbers and be clear that you've earned the right to be able to train. If you haven't, then we have to do the tough work of considering, are they a fit for the team? Okay, so this is difficult decision times when we're looking at these sort of things. The low will, high skill quadrant, that was the old timer who was sitting in the office by himself while you're feeding them drawings under the door. Okay, they're often they have savant technical skills. There's usually a place for them, but their toxicity, I call it poo in the swimming pool. Okay, it kind of spreads out. You don't really want to get in the same pool as them anymore. Okay, if they're toxic, they're going to be impacting the performance of other people in your firm. It's not good. What we start seeing is that when you start building a team where you've got high will, high skill people, we call these the rock stars, that those low will, high skill people, they tend to leave on their own accord. I've seen it probably 4 or 5 times this year alone, where we've been working with an office and they've gone some real rigor in their hiring process, and they've started to find rock star players. They're coming in, they're ambitious, they've got talent, and they're like, oh, we've got Arthur in the back there, and he's good with the planning drawings and stuff, but he's not very nice. No one likes him. He's a pretty miserable old sod. We want to fire him, but yeah, he does good work every so often. And as they bring in more high skill, high will people, it always happens. They're like, oh, Arthur put his 2-week notice in. We're so excited. And he leaves. Okay. So there's a kind of organic pruning that happens as you start building a high performance team. But again, this is something for business owners, when you really start looking at what you're doing in your firms, and you've got to start being ruthlessly honest with yourself. Are these people still a fit in my organization? Making the difficult decisions to let people go is that's some of the most powerful things you can do for your own firm. Right? We had a client last year who, it was heartbreaking in a sense, because he had these two people in the firm that had been there with him for like 20 years or so. Okay, testament to what he was doing, but they lost their mojo. They weren't interested anymore. He'd had a lot of his kind of performance conversations, and he made the decision, like, I've got to let them go. And it was very, very difficult at first to do that. And it was emotional, and doors were slammed and all sorts of stuff. 6 months later, there's been things like those people are now working again, but on contract. So they're managing their own time and their own fees. New people have come in and filled that void, who are these high skill, high will players. Things change. Okay. It's difficult, but massively important. So this is a very good, useful tool. I invite you to, after this, sit down, start with yourself first. Okay. Because if you're low skill, low will, and you're leading a business, then you've got to have some serious conversations. This is one of my favorite exercises to do, and we'll do it for like a couple of minutes. Left-hand side, what's working with your team? Okay. What's really great? What are you doing well? Right-hand side, what's not working? So you've already started to stir the pot with some of those reflection questions earlier. I just want you to start jotting this down. This is a bit like a kind of audit or analysis that becomes very useful for you to be able to make plans from in the future. So let's give you 3 minutes. Just get started with this exercise. Get a piece of paper or your phone. What's working really well? What's not working, or not working as well as you would like it to, in relation to your overall team's performance and your leadership? Okay. And then the next question I'd like you to think about is, what is the impact of the things that are not working or not working as well as you'd like them to? What are they impacting throughout the rest of the business? So maybe you've identified that you have a very reactive hiring process. You win a piece of work, and then you're like, oh my God, just bring anybody else in. As long as they've got a heartbeat and we've got a seat for them, we'll do that. Okay. That can cause lots of problems. Or perhaps you've got a toxic business culture, or you don't have a clear vision of where you're going in the firm, or roles and responsibilities have not been clearly outlined. What kind of impact do these things have on the financial performance, culture, quality of the work that you're producing, and your overall levels of satisfaction? You can just jot a few single words as mnemonics here. Okay. These are a few of our clients. I tried to choose some Texans for you, we've been working with them for some of them a few years, some of them not as long, who have all made big changes with their teams and had kind of amazing results. Carolina and Eric, very focused on creating a very compelling vision. They're based down in McAllen, and then wanting to have, a big impact on the area and the architectural scene down there, if you like. And within the last 6 months, through having a very clear vision and articulating it, and being much more transparent with their finances, tracking their performance metrics, and discussing that with their team members, and being very aggressive with going after the kind of work that supports their vision, they've been able to increase their revenue. In the last 6 months, they've had the same amount of revenue that they had in the last 12. This is Taizo. Taizo was a bottleneck, self-confessed bottleneck, and implemented what we call the networked practice. So this is a kind of studio unit type of system that is very useful as a very efficient structure for your team. And that's taken him from doing 60-hour weeks back to a much more regular time. And he's been able to pursue other things, like he had an exhibition, and he's able to travel a lot more, and his team are very, very empowered. And then one of our clients here in Austin, Coexist, they have been fantastic in using a very diligent hiring process, being very focused on profit, articulating their vision. They've improved that realization rate. I think they were down somewhere like 60, 70%, and now that's up at 94%. So we're really, really pleased with them. And then they've improved things like their utilization rate and their overall well-being in the firm. So my invitation for all of you is those of you who'd like a high-performance team audit, that is a phone number here. I have an American number for a limited period of time. Feel free to text me on that, and you can say, hey, Ryan, I loved your hat. We're game for an audit call. Send me a message and I'll respond, and we can kind of see if there's anything that we can do. Or you can just type in APTA and put a little emoticon with the Texan hat thing on it, and we'll do that.
Want to stop being the bottleneck in your firm? Then stop hiring seat fillers and start building a team of self-managing pros. The Rockstar Hiring Guide shows you exactly how. You'll learn how to find, evaluate, and onboard people who actually drive results so you can focus on being the visionary instead of the workhorse. It's yours free at businessofarchitecture.com/rockstar. Thank you to our recent listeners who left reviews for the podcast on iTunes. Your reviews help others find this podcast, so this rising tide raises all the boats. To be acknowledged on the show, open up the podcast app on your iPhone, search for Business of Architecture, and after clicking on the show, scroll all the way to the bottom and leave a review. And now, a word from our sponsors.
BIM can be important for your next project, but it's not the only thing you need for your next project. That's why it's important that 95% of manufacturers who offer free BIM files on ARCAT also offer another type of data your project needs. That means 95% of the products with BIM also have CAD files and are in a specification, in a patented spec wizard, and or have product information to help you make the right selection. So stop going to a site with just BIM and go to arcad.com to get everything you need for your next project for free and without registering. That's ARCAT, ARCAT.com. A while ago, we began to hear reports of a company that was helping some of our clients build remote teams. We looked into it more closely and discovered the company World Teams that was helping small architectural practitioners build remote teams that were both capable and qualified. We were intrigued by another business that are addressing one of the critical pain points for small architectural practices, which is the ability to grow and shrink a team effectively, to be able to handle higher workflow without having to staff up significantly, and also being very sensitive about labor cost. World Teams is built to address these issues. World Teams is a small but mighty company that helps architectural practices build high-performing remote teams quickly and efficiently, saving you the headache of sorting resumes and interviewing underqualified candidates. World Teams operates in your time zone and prioritizes near-native English speakers, ensuring clear and efficient communication with your remote team members. They have flexible contracts so you can adjust your team size as your needs evolve. Additionally, you're connected directly with your skilled professionals, which fosters trust and collaboration, and World Teams helps you reduce your operating cost without compromising the quality that's so important to a practice. To download a free guide for building a remote team for a small architectural practice, go to businessofarchitecture.com/World Teams. That's one word, businessofarchitecture.com/World Teams. You've built a practice that balances design, delivery, and client trust. But when it comes to taxes, your firm's structure might be quietly working against you. At Gelt, we specialize in helping architecture firms uncover hidden tax inefficiencies, from outdated ownership setups to missed expense opportunities and project-level tax traps. Even well-run studios can leave 5 figures on the table each year simply because their financial foundation hasn't evolved as the firm has. Gelt helps you design a smarter structure, one that turns your firm's growth into real savings and stronger take-home income. Gelt, tax strategy built for architects. Don't wait for next tax season. Schedule your complimentary consultation at joingelt.com. That's JOINGELT.com to learn more and mention BOA when you sign up.
Today's episode of the Business of Architecture show is sponsored by Smart Practice TM, the world's leading step-by-step solution for small architectural practice owners that want to structure their existing practice so the complexity of business doesn't get in the way of the architecture. Because you see, it likely isn't your architecture skills that hold you back. It's the business aspects of running a practice, managing projects and people, dealing with clients, contractors, and money. So if you're ready to quit being a glorified administrator and get back to architecture again, go to smartpracticemethod.com to discover the proven, simple, and easy to implement smart practice method that is revolutionizing firm management for owners and teams. Hey, Rion Willard here, and I want to thank you for joining us today and remind you that the views expressed on this show by our guests, which was me, do actually represent those of the host. And we make no representation, promise, guarantee, pledge, warranty, contract, bond, or commitment except to help you conquer the world. Carpe diem.